So what is a string? A string is a pretty straightforward example, but there's a few things to note about string. String refers to a data type that is a character. For instance, we have hello world, and when we save it and then we refresh here, you'll see that we have hello world gets printed out. So bam. So it's characters, it's words, anything in the English language. But there's a couple things that you can do with strings, and some things that may not be super apparent. For one, if you're using, you can use single or double quotes. So we'll still have the same result here, all the same. Hello world, but when we're using single quotes or double quotes, one thing that we can't do, you see we get this JavaScript error here, is have it on multi-lines. Now if we wanted to do something like that, we can use backticks, which are the characters right next to the one on your keyboard, like so, and our backticks will work all the same as a string, except it gives us some additional functionality. And you'll notice here, when we go ahead and hit down, and all we're doing is printing out the value, that now hello world is coming out on 2 different lines. You'll also notice that it's on 2 different lines. Why is that? Well, because the string is actually storing how much spacing we have in here, so it's keeping all this empty space is part of the string as well. So you'll see hello world, hello world. You'll also be able to use what's called template literals, or string interpolation, which, let's say we have another variable here called inserted word, and we just set this equal to world. And you'll notice how I'm using quotes here. You don't have to use backticks with it, but we have a string here, and instead of actually doing this, maybe we want to just pass in a variable from somewhere else. We can pass in world like so, and then when we save it, and let's clear our console right here, and when we refresh our code, world is not defined. Oop, excuse me, inserted word. Save that, F5. You'll see now we have our hello world. So we're able to dynamically apply that. Now in the past, we would have had to do some bullshit like this, where we would do hello space plus inserted word, and let's say we had a quotation after the fact, then we'd have to do something like that. I think it's very long, and instead we have one very clean system with the backticks and string interpolation. So that's really the string at the end of the day. It's something but characters, and coming up next, we're going to go ahead and dive into a little bit more of the functions and all the methods that are part of strings. So another thing to keep in mind is strings really only have one real property, and that's dot length. So on a string, we're able to call the dot length property here. And so when we save it and refresh our page here, you'll see that we get a length of 10. And it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Always one more than what characters are in there. And what I mean by that is, say we wanted to get the char at. So we have our string, and we say, hey, what is the 0 index? So we say example dot char at, and we say, hey, what is our first spot or our 0 index? We'd be getting an H, right? And the reason I bring this up, it's just a good example to use char at. What happens if we say, well, the length is 10, right? And we want to get the last character of a string. All of a sudden, we're not getting anything. It's coming back empty because it doesn't exist. So a good example of how we might get the last character, just to show how we might chain some of this together, is example.length -1. And as you're using for loops, and you'll see that's the D, obviously, when you get more accustomed with for loops, you also write a for loop that's very similar to this, and oftentimes you'll get the length of an array, or length of a string, or length of a or a number, no length in that, so string or array, and you'll say, look, example dot length, and you'll I++ or something like that, and you'll use length that way as well.